Hello, this is a chart that is supposed to help simplify organic compounds. These organic compounds you'll see in the rest of your studies in biology and anatomy. These are four compounds that you will read about over and over. So you need to know a little basic information. You can't know everything about it. Actually, organic chemistry is taught usually in a 16-week period, and there's no way that I can teach you organic chemistry in 30 minutes. Nor can I teach you chemistry in 2 days. Chemistry is normally taught in chemistry 1 and 2, a 32-week period. And I take that back. Organic chemistry, too, is taught in a 32-week period. So what I'm trying to do in a couple of minutes is give you an overview of what you will learn in detail in other classes should you take them. This is just giving you a working knowledge so that when you see the word carbohydrate or monosaccharide or amino acids, that you have a little bit of knowledge base to understand what they're talking about, maybe in a cellular process or a bodily process. So there are four organic compounds: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates are made of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen will always be in a 2-to-1 ratio. If we have H2O, that's water. So listen to the word carbohydrates, carbon hydrated, carbon water. So carbohydrates. The monomer, or the simplest unit of carbohydrates, are called monosaccharides, and they are glucose, fructose, and galactose. They have 6 carbons. Now there are some simpler sugars that only have 5 carbons, ribose and deoxyribose, that you'll see play an important role in nucleic acids. But I really just wanted to mention those so that you'll know they're sugars, carbohydrates, 5 carbon sugars, ribose and deoxyribose. So let's go back to the monosaccharides. That's the polymer, the simplest unit, like one bead on a necklace of beads. If we put several of those beads together, then we create polymers, or many of the single units. If we put 2 monomers together, we get disaccharides. And the ones we use in the body a lot, or most frequently, are sucrose, which is table sugar, lactose, which is milk sugar, and maltose. Now, if we put more than 2 monosaccharides together, we have a very long chain of beads, then that is a polysaccharide. The ones that we see in the body a lot are glycogen, starch, and cellulose. Now, what do we use carbohydrates for in the body? Mostly for quick energy. If you're talking about converting ATP to ATP and releasing energy, it's going to be because mostly you break down carbohydrates. We do use them some in building, and you'll see examples of that in DNA and RNA. But when you think of carbohydrates, think of quick energy. A second group of organic compounds are known as lipids. They're also, like carbohydrates, made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but there is no 2-to-1 ratio of hydrogen to oxygen. Really, there's a lot more hydrogens than there are oxygens. If you wanted to get a monomer in lipids, that would be a monoglyceride hooked to fatty acids. Now, I say that because lipids really are the weird group. They don't have monomers that go together to be polymers, except in the example of monosaccharides being built into monoglycerides being built into triglycerides. All the other polymer lipids you see, like steroids and bile salts and fat soluble vitamins and cortisol, all of those have a different unique structure to them that don't follow that monoglyceride fatty acid pattern. The reason that they put all of these in the lipid group, even though they don't follow the monomer to polymer example, is because they're insoluble in water. And they needed to put these weird ones in a group of the 4 organic compounds, and so they fit better with lipids than any of the other organic compounds. So our basic one that follows the rule is monoglyceride into triglycerides. The function of lipids in the body is to store energy. We use them some to build with. You'll see that in the plasma membrane. They're also for protection and insulation. You think about fat because lipids are in the fat group. We have fat insulation in our body. They also can be regulatory. A third group of organic compounds consists of the elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. The monomers, the building blocks, are amino acids. If you put 2 amino acids together, you get a dipeptide. If you put 3 amino acids together, you get tripeptide. If you put many amino acids together, you get a polypeptide. Now, in making those peptide chains, the sequence or the amino acids one after another, just naming the amino acids in a line or a sequence, that's considered the primary structure of that protein. Now, proteins have an attraction for other parts of the proteins. Those are called hydrogen bonds, and we touched a little bit on them in our discussion of chemistry. Well, the hydrogen bonds make the polymer attractive to itself. And so what it does, it takes on a spiral or a bending pattern. We call that its secondary structure. Well, after it bends or spirals, now other parts of the molecule are attracted to each other because of hydrogen bonds, and it forms a three-dimensional shape, which is called the tertiary structure. If you put several tertiary proteins together, and you have that relationship, we call that the quaternary structure. Hemoglobin is built out of 4 tertiary protein groups. And so when you look at the entire hemoglobin molecule, you say, oh, that's its quaternary structure. You can see a relationship in the 4 tertiary polypeptide units. So what do we use proteins for? Muscle contraction, they play a heavy role in that. Building and regulating, transport, and in emergencies, we can break down proteins for energy. Now, I have the word enzymes under polymers because one type of polymer that we will talk about that is protein in nature is an enzyme. It's a protein catalyst. It's going to assist us in our chemical reactions. We've talked about them in the discussion on chemistry. They make reactions happen more readily, quicker, easier, because they put stress on the bond. And the last organic compound is nucleic acids. They're made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphate. Their monomer or simple groups are called nucleotides. And the nucleotide we'll look at in more detail in chapter 3 when we talk about the cell. But it's basically a phosphate hooked to a sugar, which is a ribose 5-carbon sugar, to a nitrogen base. Phosphate sugar, nitrogen base. Phosphate sugar, nitrogen base. They're going to be strung together like that. And our 2 polymers, one of them is single-stranded, it's RNA. The other is double-stranded, it's DNA. RNA helps to bring the pattern to the ribosomes so that we can make proteins. DNA is where the RNA gets the pattern. DNA has your genetic material that has the patterns for making you. And so when we need to make more of you, RNA goes to DNA, gets the pattern, and brings it to the ribosome of the cell, which makes protein. This is not easy. Chemistry is not easy. I simply made this chart not to confuse, but to consolidate a lot of material in one place so that you can see a relationship between the organic compounds and differences. I hope this helps you.